In an attempt to continue the longevity of our STI here, we're going to be adding some more reliability modifications to the car today. So we're putting an oil cooler on the car. Now, with your boy being cheap and not wanting to pay for just a plug and play kit, I just ordered a ton of stuff here in front of me to make it work. We should be able to make it work. I should have ordered 90-degree fittings, but I didn't. It's all right, we'll make it work. So what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Now there's gonna be a lot of changes going on with this car soon, including the new engine, everything like that. A lot of parts are coming in for this thing. I'm still waiting for the flares though. We have an APR splitter I still gotta put on this thing. We got the wheels and tires sitting back here. I've got a ton of RaceQuip stuff for the other STI. I've got bearings, crank, piston. No, these are rods for the new engine. This is what we're focusing on today though. So we're gonna be building an oil cooler for the 05 STI. Now there's a couple of things I wanna get into before we just start jumping into this, but if this is something that you guys are looking to do is just build your own and save a little bit of money rather than just paying for a pre-built kit, by all means, I'll link everything right here down below in the description for you guys. So we have a Mishimoto 19 row core cooler that we're going to be using. I've got 20 feet of dash 10 AN line. I've got some of this nice high temp hose protection stuff for that line. I've got a variety of fittings here. Now most of they're all dash 10, by the way. All of this is dash 10 line. The majority of these fittings that I ordered are 45 degrees only because, well, I only ordered 2 of them. I should have ordered 90s, but everywhere that I was ordering from at the time was just sold out. So we're going to make it work with 45 degree fitting. So I've got a variety of 45s. I got some 60s. I got some straights. I got all the good stuff here. I've got 2 of these very nice, I actually really like these. They're these like nice banjo bolt fittings for the oil cooler sandwich plate. So kind of like those are dash 10. Have a Mishimoto oil cooler sandwich plate core guy. I have a new oil filter, might as well throw that on if we're doing this. I do have some backup oil. We don't need to drain the oil out of the car. However, we are going to lose some oil, so do keep that in mind. So this should cover everything that we need to be able to install this oil cooler. Oh, you're also gonna need this fitting, and you may need this if you do it. We're gonna get into this little fitting right here. So with this little fitting right here, this is a fitting to delete the factory oil cooler. Now STIs come with, I believe some WRXs do, I don't think all WRXs do. STIs for sure come with a oil cooler already on them. It's a water to oil cooler type of deal where it uses the coolant in the car to pass through an oil cooler to both help raise the temperature of the oil on cold start and keep it consistent. But the problem with that is it stays consistent with water temp. So when I was debating doing this, I was like, do I want to delete the OEM oil cooler and just run an external, or do I want to retain the OEM oil cooler and run an external? And that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to keep the OEM STI oil cooler on the car and run an external cooler. Now the sandwich plate that I have is a thermostatic sandwich plate, which means there's a thermostat in there and it won't open up until it sees 185 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it'll start flowing oil through the oil cooler. Now with the OEM one, there's a couple reasons why I am retaining it. This is my daily driver. This is the car I drive pretty much every day and do spirited driving with. And I've still been trying to get on track registration to get this car out to the track. But with retaining the OEM oil cooler, here's the benefits to it, and here's the benefits of running an external cooler in addition to retaining the OEM one. The OEM one both cools and helps heat up the oil. So in the wintertime when it's nice and cold out, the coolant that flows through that oil cooler is going to help increase or raise the oil temperature. It's just going to make it warm up a little bit quicker. With daily driving and sitting in traffic, with only running an external cooler, if the car is sitting in traffic and you're not actively moving, you're not getting any airflow going over that external cooler that you have on the car. So by retaining the OEM cooler, I can at least control temperature with the oil a little bit better. Just works a little bit better for daily driving, in my opinion. If you guys have a differing view or a differing opinion, please feel free to throw it down below. But there is a little bit of a drawback to that because we're retaining the OEM oil cooler with the addition of the external. The heat transfer from the coolant, if coolant starts to get hot, will transfer heat. That's just how thermodynamics work. Hotter temperatures are going to go to colder temperatures. Just keep that in mind. So with that being said, let's get the bumper off the car, let's get this car jacked up in the air, and let's get the oil filter off so that way we can start preparing to get this thing on there. I also need to pull the intercooler core off because I already know where I'm mounting this thing. I need this big APR splitter to just slide down here out of my way for a little bit. Don't knock that wheel over. Please don't knock that wheel over. Please don't knock the wheel over. Magnets. Where's my gloves? Give me my gloves! Glove! You ain't got no glove, you ain't getting no love. The grill. Do, do, do. There's bird poop in my cowl. Get that guy off. Intercooler core comes off. We'll undo this piping. Put my knee under this, my hand under this. There we go. What is this from? That's like a nicely piece of like cut metal. It's beautiful. All right, oil filter. Time for you. Oh man, it's got pea oil all over the header. Let's just quickly. There is no doing this quickly. Your hands get like oily and they're like hot. There we go. All right. We'll let that pee oil for a little bit. Once it's done peeing, we can start mocking everything up. You just do your thing. So while our oil down there drains, I'm gonna show you guys where I'm gonna mount this. So I'm gonna mount it vertically right here. That way it can still get sufficient airflow with the front mount, because the front mount doesn't come across this front crash bar, so it's gonna get really good airflow up top. It's gonna get mediocre airflow down below. Now, something I do wanna say is you do not wanna mount oil coolers upside down, so that way both of the drains are facing down. If that's the case, keep in mind that that is going to empty every time you turn off the car, and all that oil that's in there is gonna go back into the sump. Ideally, if you could mount it vertically so both ports face up, so that way oil stays in the oil cooler, that would be ideal. But for what we are doing, it's just gonna make a little bit more sense to mount it like, actually, could I mount it to this? Could I mount it to that? Would that stick up too high? Yeah, that would stick up way too high. So we're gonna mount it like that. So I need to make a bracket that goes from the side of the oil cooler right there that comes up and goes to a 90, so that way I can secure it up here to the top of the core support. Let me get these zip ties out of here. So I've got just enough scrap sheet metal laying around where I can make this. So let me pull that oil cooler off. Let's get some brackets made. Let's get it mounted up, and then we can get our sandwich plate on there and start figuring out our line orientation. So came over here, got these brackets made up. We'll put some riv nuts where we're gonna end up mounting these on the core support, but for now, we're gonna let those dry. While those dry, we're gonna get the sandwich plate installed. So this is the sandwich plate I'm using. It's a, what is it, Mishimoto 180 degree thermostat. So the side with the O-ring is gonna go up to where the stock oil cooler is, or the stock, or just the block. These fittings I had to order, well, obviously I ordered everything separately, but these are really nice. They're Banjo Bolt -10 fittings. I don't know how well they're gonna work, but I really like the concept behind them, because then I don't have to run a straight to like a 90 coming straight off of there. These essentially just act as the 90. So we're gonna get this guy installed. You are going to need one of these. This is also sold separate. This slides right through there, obviously through the other side, screws up into the stock oil threaded piece, where normally if you were gonna be deleting the oil cooler, you'd use this piece, but since we're retaining it, it's just gonna screw into where the oil filter screwed in, and then our oil filter will screw into that nice new threaded portion. So let's get this installed. Once that paint dries, we'll get that guy installed, then we'll make some AN lines. So my biggest concern here is clearance. Can we get the clearance we need? Barely, just barely. This is always the troubling part with Subaru oil coolers, is where to route things so that way it doesn't touch the header. Because last thing you want is the exhaust manifold. Now let me mock up an oil cooler on there, or an oil filter. Do we clear the header? That's the question. So it looks like we're just going to barely clear it. It doesn't touch, but it's very close. Okay, so I've been playing with this for a minute, and I think I've got a way to make it work. So if I have the oil cooler sit right about there, and I use this 60 degree fitting right here, it doesn't touch the header, everything clears closely, but that's how all Subaru oil coolers are. I can wrap this hose, have it come up and then around. Same with this one, I can have it wrap around behind where the AC used to go, like back through here, and then back to where I need it to go. So I think that's what we're gonna run with. I think that's what we're gonna do here. All right, so I just went and mocked one hose up. I just threw a fitting on here just to see if I even like how this comes out. So let me just thread him onto his home. Dude, AN fittings are always a pain to tighten on. I would need this whole oil. Dude, this hose keeps like smacking me in the butthole. Bro, I think that'll work. Right there. Boom, baby. It'll work. I'm pretty happy with that. It doesn't hang down too low. It doesn't touch anything. As you can see, we're not touching there. It clears, everything clears. Everything is beautiful. I'm actually gonna probably like turn that. I'm gonna center that when the time comes. It's not really where I want it in this final position, but let's go ahead and get the heat sheathing over this line. Let's get some actual line thrown on that guy right there. And then we can get our oil cooler mounted up and cut these lines to length. But hey, clearance wise, we're looking beautiful actually. Your boy got some stuff figured out here. So I figured out how to get this thing mounted. And then I got the lines cut and figured out. So on these little brackets I made, I swapped them around and they work for the bottom too. So I put riv nuts in the bottom of the core support here. I had to bash this piece in just a little bit with the old persuader right there. But after I bashed that in, this line fit perfectly. Like it ain't going nowhere. I got to tighten this down. Now the core still does wiggle around a little bit. So I'm gonna throw a zip tie from the core over to the frame right there and that'll stop it from wiggling. I already tested it and everything like that. So that'll be good. But just having it like this, like it doesn't hit anything. If I were to just leave it, it just moves around more than I'd like. And I could probably make a bracket for that. To be honest, I just don't really care to right now. Now under the car, this is where things get a little bit tight with the oil cooler, the oil filter, and everything on there, because we have two oil coolers on there. We have the stock one, which retains coolant up there, and then we've got our external sandwich plate that houses these fittings right here. It does make clearance a little bit tight, but I can confirm it does fit with the Killer Bee header on there. Yes, it's going to be a little bit more of a pain to change oil or to do oil changes in the future, but I'm not going to stress about it too much right now. So it is nice being able to retain this or have this, because now we can have an extra, up to an extra quart of oil in the car, because it's going to be funneling through there. So pretty happy with how that is. Now for these lines, because I know some of you guys are going to ask, yes, I'm going to clean them up. This is like high temp silicone hose coating something. I don't know, Vibrant makes it and it works out pretty well. I kind of wish I had another 60-degree fitting to put on that side, but this 45 does work. I'm not too stressed about this right now. Since I have that APR splitter way back there in the cardboard, that is going to go under the car and it's going to act as a splash guard. It's going to keep anything from hitting those lines and whatnot, so I'm not too worried about those. But pretty happy with the way that this guy turned out. I'm just laying here on the ground now, just enjoying my time. So now I got to take these hoses, I got to secure them down, clean them up a little bit, secure them over here, make sure that nothing's going to rub through them or anything like that. I intentionally left this line loose right now because we need to put oil in this before we start the car, so I need to find like a syringe or something to be able to like funnel oil in there with. But for now it's gonna stay on there just so I can get these like secured line thing figured out. So secure the lines down, let's get oil in here, we'll get the front mount back on, we'll hook up all the piping, and then we'll test it, make sure we have no oil leaks. That's my biggest concern, is oil leaks with this, but I don't think we'll have any. So I've got the whole oil cooler system pretty much buttoned up at this point, ready to go. We're about to start the car, make sure we ain't got no oil leaks. If we got an oil leak, we're gonna have a problem. We're gonna have to go back in there, try to figure it out. I filled up the oil cooler as much as I could. I kind of just made a hose or a funnel to fill it up with. So I just kind of used an AN fitting I had laying around with some hose and then another AN fitting to kind of make like a DIY funnel. It worked for the most part, but let me show you guys the oil cooler real quick, how everything's routed, everything's zip tied up, cleaned up. Then we'll get this thing started. Make sure it don't blow up. If it blows up, it's not the end of the world, but we don't want it to blow up. So up here in the front of the car, the oil cooler sits perfectly behind the intercooler. I'm gonna have to do something with these like Hellahorn wiring and whatnot. I'm gonna have to extend them out a little bit because I'm gonna move the other Hellahorn over here so that way I still have both my horns, but I'm not too concerned with that right this second. So both of our lines fit perfectly behind the intercooler, just because that was one thing I was a little stressed about. So I have a P-clip down there actually holding them in. Down here underneath of the car, the lines are not touching anything. The oil filter is not touching anything. Yes, it's very compact, and yes, it is a very tight fit, but hey, it'll work, and that's what we're shooting for here. My theory behind this is the header shouldn't cook the oil filter if it doesn't cook the oil pan. So I mean, yes, everything gets hot down here, but it shouldn't be like detrimental. So let's turn it on, make sure it don't blow up. So far, so good. We have no oil leaks coming off the oil cooler. No leaks down here. We had a little bit of smoke from a little bit of spilt oil when we let it drain. We're still solid right there, which is good. So because I left that oil temp gauge in Celsius and not on Fahrenheit, I need to get the temp up to 85 degrees Celsius, which is 185 degrees Fahrenheit. That's when the oil sandwich plate should open and allow oil flow to the oil cooler. So I guess we're playing the waiting game now. She's at like 82. 82, 81. Come on, just go up to 85. That's all we want, 85. 85, baby, 85, come on. Up or down?
They're only twice the price.
It's going up, so it's hanging out around 80?
Yeah.
No shit.
I don't know, me.
It's right on the cusp of 85.
Well, now I can't see.
Sorry, it's at like, it's literally like 84 and a half. What are you gonna do?
Ooh.
It's going down again.
Ooh.
Hey, look at it go down. So before at idle, the car was idling around 90 to about 100 degrees Celsius, which gets up to about 212, and that was just at idle with just the OEM STI oil cooler. With this external oil cooler, as soon as it gets near 80 degrees, it opens, and then I can feel like oil flowing through that cooler. It is definitely doing its job. And I think blocking it a little bit with the front mount is going to help, so that way we don't overcool our oil. Plus, with it being a thermostatic cooler in the wintertime, it shouldn't be a problem because we're still running coolant through the stock oil cooler, which is gonna help maintain temperatures in the cold weather. But if it does get hot out or we do start to beat on the car, that's when it's gonna flip that thermostatic switch, start flowing oil to the external cooler. So I think this is a pretty perfect setup right here. Matt, what you say? You need one for Chewy? Yeah. Now that we have the oil cooler wrapped up, we verified it's working, we verified it's not leaking. I need to get this other Hella-Horn mounted back up on here, adjust some wiring real quick, then we can get that oil filter tightened a little bit tighter down underneath the car once it's cooled down a little bit. Get the bumper back on, the grill back on, get it back on the ground, verify oil level just to make sure we're still got on oil, because remember, with having that oil cooler, we are now adding an extra quart of oil to the car. How many quarts of oil does your Subaru take? 8. I don't think it's 8. What's stock? 4.5 is stock. Killer Bee adds what? Like we'll round up and say 1.5, so it's like 6. So realistically, like 7 quarts ish, like 7 quarts of oil. Let's get this cleaned up, get the bumper back on, get it back on the ground. So car's all buttoned up back and good to go at this point. Oil cooler fits beautifully. It's pretty dark out now because I took like a dinner break for a little while, came back out and like wrapped things up, but glad the oil cooler's in the car, glad it's all installed. Like I said, I'll link all this stuff down below for you guys. Oil cooler, like line length, all that stuff, mounting brackets, everything like that is totally going to be determined based off where you decide to mount your oil cooler. Just keep that in mind. But let me show you guys like the last little bit of this and we'll wrap this video up. I do apologize, it's pretty dark outside, but the oil cooler fits behind the grill beautifully. You can only kind of see it when you look for it. I moved the other Hella-Horn over to that side of the car too, so I still have both Hella-Horns. Super glad that this oil cooler kit is installed on the car. You can't even tell, which is what I like. And I also got the new APR splitter kind of test fit down there, just laying under the bumper. That'll probably be in a later install video once I get a lip for this car, because I'm not gonna run a splitter without a lip. It would just look funny. So there we go, you guys. DIY oil cooler, not as bad as it seems. Just make sure you kind of pre-plan for what fittings you're gonna need. I kind of wish I had a couple 90 degrees when I was going through this, but I made it work with the 45s and the 60s and the straight one that I had, the random one straight one. But I'm really excited to see how this oil cooler is going to do. I'm gonna get out here in the next like week or so, go do some spirited driving with the car, see what oil temps get dropped down to, because beforehand they were getting high, and I could physically hear the oil temp getting high because the heads would get louder as the oil would start to thin out and get super hot. So very curious to see how it's going to do. But anyways, if this video helped you guys out, you know what to do. Go ahead, hit that like button, turn it black, blue, green, yellow, silver, purple, cyan, whatever color it turns for you. Color of the day is going to be, I don't know, whatever color it is outside, because it's dark outside. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to be, go ahead and hit your boy up one of these corners. No idea which one it'll be yet. Oh, and if you've made it this far in the video, I just ordered the flex fuel sensor for this car, so it's gonna be making some more power with that new engine. Be going back to E85. And with that though, I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, homies. Woo!